Hi, I'm Fred Rihn, Senior Producer at AT&T Sportsnet, and this is DingoTalk.
Everyone has a story to tell. Welcome to DingoTalk, where we explore the experiences that make us who we are. Here's your host, Carlo Guadagnino.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is DingoTalk. My guest this week is Fred Rihn, Senior Producer at AT&T Sports. Fred, thank you. This is not our first meeting, but thank you for sitting down and taking time to talk.
Thank you. Appreciate having me.
Absolutely. So let's take you back. As we do with most of our guests, we take you back to high school senior year and we work our way forward. You are an alumni of Shaler area high school. And you first couple years out of high school, you went the CCAC route as opposed to jumping right in. Why that decision?
Well, that decision was strictly financial. When I got out of high school, did not have the grades to get scholarships to all the big schools that I was dreaming of going to. So, I decided to get a lot of that, the general education courses kind of out of the way by going to CCAC. So the reason, and I think there was a 2.5 year gap there because I went full time for a year and a half, picked up some credits, and then decided kind of to do the part-time thing for a little while to try to save some money to eventually transfer to a 4-year school, which I did. But yeah, it was mostly financial. It was pretty easy to commute to and from. You said I went to Shaler. I grew up in Millville, so commuting to the north and north side campuses were pretty easy for me. So and then I worked full time for a little bit and tried to go to night school, tried to go to classes at night part time. And then I just took one last semester off so that I could make that final push to make some money to save up before I went away.
Now, before we jump into to where you end up transferring, is that because that's obviously a problem now, is that 2 of those 4 years are really consumed with the general ed classes. Is that something you would recommend to someone in a similar situation where maybe they're looking at it, grades aren't great, finances aren't great, get the gen ed classes out of the way and then move on?
Sure. I ended up, I don't remember exactly how many credits I took when I went to CCAC, but I know that I transferred 42 of them over to Cal U. So that was, I was like midway through my sophomore year by the time I transferred my credits over. And that, back then, I don't know what it is now, but back then I think CCAC was $68 a credit versus, the going to a 4-year school was probably $250, $300 a credit. I'm sure it's triple that now, but, that was the big thing. And then, and it really helped me as far as trying to not accumulate a huge amount of debt, from, loans and whatnot by going right to a 4-year school and end up, not graduating in 4 years anyway.
So before we get into your Cal U transfer, was this sports media? Was that what you always wanted to do? Was that where the passion was and you that was the goal, is how to get there? Or did you find that as you got to, or was it not sports media? Did you just want to be behind the camera or in front of the camera?
I wanted to be an athlete, but that certainly wasn't going to work out.
We all wanted to be athletes.
If you've ever seen me head to toe, you would clearly know exactly why that didn't work out. But I actually, from pretty much my sophomore year in high school, we had a TV station there, even back in the early to mid 90s, we had an outlet for doing that. We had a guy, shout out to Joe Miller, who's been doing it for a long, long time, would bring a camera and a tripod and a VHS deck to the games and plug 2 mics in and have 2 students announce the game and record it. And back then they would put it on one of the old like TCI cable local channel. There was one local channel that had an old like tech scan screen of community events.
Local access.
It was like a community board of events. And then at 7:00 every Monday night, it would just cut to black, and up came our football and basketball game. So, so from basically 10th grade on, I was doing a lot of that kind of stuff, and most of it was in front of the camera. I think a lot of the people that end up in sports media want to do this. They want to be in front of the camera, but it only face for radio, really. I mean, when you look at it. So
it's funny you bring that up, because I've been told I have a face for radio, but I keep coming back for more of this. They keep telling me to put on more shows. I have more guests, and like the face for radio doesn't get better.
It was a much more limited market back in my day. We didn't have the the main internet stuff, so there was a much more limited market back in the day.
So you go through to your sophomore year of college, and you decide what is now Penn West, but it's at the time it's Cal U. Why Cal U?
So I was up late one night. I had watched I think I watched a Penguin game on TV, which was Fox Sports Pittsburgh back in the day. And after their post-game show was over, there was a college football game on, but it wasn't just like, one of the regular college football games you see. It had the same graphics package that they would use in the Fox Sports games, but it was California University and Clarion University. And I was really intrigued by the fact that there was, and the two guys calling the game, I remember one guy was he was an older guy who eventually I found out worked for the university, but had a student color analyst. So I thought that was an interesting thing. And I was kind of blown away by that. Like, here they are in Pittsburgh, I didn't know what California University was at the time. So I did some research on it and saw that they had an award-winning student-run television station there. So I went and checked it out, and I was sold from day one. The day I walked into that media suite, I knew that was a place for me, and I couldn't wait to get started. I think it was probably almost a year before I ended up starting school there, but I knew that, and of course, by the time I got there, they stopped putting their games on Fox Sports Pittsburgh. So.
So the whole thing that got you in, that one went.
That's okay. It wasn't their fault. It's all right. But it was. But no, I wouldn't change anything about it. It was the perfect experience for me. It was the perfect place for me to land.
And it's interesting. Your Cal U experience and my Bethany experience have one. I won't call him large, but I'll call him easily seen. Because I've always called him easily seen. We have one connection. His name's Eric Sprouse. He's a pirate now. So if you guys are looking for a good pirate show, type in Eric Sprouse into Facebook or into YouTube, and you will find him. Was he as crazy as he is now? Because I got to him in like 2014, and he had a different way of viewing things, but it worked. So was he like that when you met him? And
he was very instrumental in helping me get started, because when I got there, I only knew how to, and it's this no slight on anyone who I worked with before that, but I was only responsible for calling games, unplugging the mic, and wrapping up the cable. That was the end of my job for 3 or 4. But I immediately started doing stuff at the TV station. When you start getting into classes, they can't teach you everything right away. So you learn a lot of, I've always been somebody who's learned by doing. I'm not a big classroom learner. I've always had to learn stuff by doing it. And so by being there and doing these things, like running replay and running audio and punching shows and, even writing and producing and editing, those kind of things. He was a big part of that. But he and the other student, like a lot of the older students that were there too, were a big help. I remember the first time I sat down to edit highlights, it was an old Beta tape to tape machine. And I was like, I just kind of sat there and stared at it until somebody walked by and said, "Hey dude, you all right?" I was like, "No, I'm not. I don't know." And that's literally how I got started in editing. So but no, Eric was a huge part of Eric, and J.R. Wheeler's Dean of Media Services there. He's now retired. Gary Smith is in charge of the group down there at Cal U now. He and Jeff Helsel, those 4 guys were huge on the CUTV side in helping me sort of get jump started.
Now, were you a part of, and I always mess this up. I know is it In Neon Night or In Neon? There was a show.
In Neon was In Neon was the series that Eric produced. I did have a small acting part in it. But if I remember right, and I may not be remembering this totally correctly, but I didn't, with everything else that was going on, I couldn't commit a huge amount of time to helping them out with that, because I think they did that. I want to say they did that my senior year, and there was just so much going on with getting ready to graduate, and I had to load up classes so that I could finish on time. So, but I wish I could have been more involved in that, because the final product of it turned out really well. I remember Eric brought it back a couple years ago via a Facebook group we were on. And I remember kind of going through some of the episodes. I never did find the one I was in, but I'm pretty sure I don't want to see that anyway.
Well, so I feel that there's a lot, your personality gives off a lot of self-deprecating humor, and you kind of are easy, you laugh at yourself easily and whatnot. So this next question, I think I wrote it specifically after we talked about what we were going to talk about. What's an insult that you are proud of, and why?
Oh boy. Oof. I don't know that there's any I'm proud of. I don't know. There's so many of them. Just that let's just go through them. I mean, I swear too much. I talk too much. I'm currently very overweight, so there's that. I got that going for me.
Are these insults other people? Or are you insulting yourself?
I'm insulting myself. I don't need to hear it from anyone else. Although my wife tells me I swear too much. That's part of the. So maybe it's that one. Maybe it's. Okay. But I promise I'll keep it clean. It's amazing how I can turn the filter on for the camera, but when the camera's off, it's freewheeling.
I can understand that. I can definitely understand that. So while you're in your senior year now, do you do your internship in your senior year? Do you do it earlier? How did that fall?
Well, I almost didn't do my internship because I was ready to graduate. It was May of 2002 was when I was scheduled to graduate, and I was ready to be done. And I was preparing resume tapes and all those things to send out to smaller market TV stations all over the East Coast, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a sports anchor or a play-by-play guy. Like, that was my thing. And even though, and I'll backtrack a little bit, while I was in school, I was trying to do everything. I was literally I spent 2 summers a work study program at the TV station engineering. I had a work study job as a master technical director. I had a work study job as the news photographer. We did a weekly news show. So I would go out and shoot all the stories for all of the news reporters and that kind of stuff. So I produced my own high school football show. I actually created and produced my own high school football show while I was there. So I had my hand in just about everything, but at the same time, that's what I wanted to do. And I was going to go forward with that. So I almost didn't do my internship because of that. And what happened was there was a friend by the name of Jeff Sandusky, and I were both sports anchors that year. And he actually got an internship at Fox Sports Pittsburgh. And he said, hey, really, you should really talk to this guy. And I think you should, come up and do it, and, so on and so forth. And I remember a conversation I had with my mom, and I guess, but, I couldn't get the internship through the communications department because my grades weren't good enough. Okay. They had a minimum grade point average that you had to meet in order to be eligible for their internship program. And I didn't meet that. Okay. Because again, I wasn't a great student. I was good at doing, not necessarily sitting and listening and learning. But somebody told me a story about another student in a situation similar to mine, where he went to another department to get his internship. So I went to the sports management department, and I had Dr. Yarbrough, I believe was his name. I had him for a class, and he said, yeah, sure, you can do the internship. But the internship program in our department is 12 credits. So not only did I have to do 12 credits worth of hours, but I had to pay for 12 credits.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to take my chances and do what I need to do. And I remember having a conversation with my mom and cleaning up the language. She said, no, you're doing it. She said, we'll take care of the money. We'll find a way, but there's no way you're not going to do an internship if you can get it. So I applied for it. I met a gentleman by the name of Craig McConnell, who ended up bringing me on for the internship for that summer, and it just kind of took off from there.
And so I was looking at your resume, and you've been with the Pittsburgh affiliate now since 2003. So it was FSN Pittsburgh, and then Root. We were going through this before, and then AT&T. So how does the internship translate into a job?
So I interned the summer of 2002. I finished my internship in August of that year, and that's when I officially graduated. And they didn't have any open positions at that time for me to fill. So I worked at the mall for a few months. And then that May, they called me right before Memorial Day and said, "Hey, we have an open position. Do you want it?" And I was like, "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Let's go." And so I started, I think the 28th or the 29th of May in 2003 as a production assistant. It was a much different setup back then, because there were a lot of people working there. But yeah, it was great. It was kind of wild to think that the internship, I almost didn't take the internship, and here I am almost 20 years later, and I'm still there. It's kind of crazy to think.
Now, as the changes have happened from FSN to Root and then to AT&T, was there ever a thought in your head like, wow, like with them changing companies, that were they letting people go? What was and how does that, as a professional, how do you kind of go do your job, but also in the back of your head know, oh my God, I could be out?
There was really only one time in that whole span that I thought I was in trouble. And, we had a show called Sports Beat that was on for a long time. And in 2009, what happened is Fox eventually sold four of their regionals to Liberty Media. And Pittsburgh was one of them. And when Liberty took over, they decided, they kind of changed the philosophy of how they wanted to do things. We weren't doing sports news shows anymore. So we used to do, out of the Pittsburgh studio, we used to do Fox Sports Pittsburgh and Fox Sports Midwest. So there was two regionals coming out. That was kind of Fox's thing. They would do multiple regionals out of the same station. But then when Pittsburgh got sold, St. Louis had to go to St. Louis. So we did, when they kind of changed philosophies and they got obviously there was, half as many shows, and then they decided to kind of change philosophies, and people, there started to be whispers that was going to be the case. And at the time, I was an associate producer. I was the fourth photographer in a group of very talented guys. I was the weekend audio guy. I was kind of, I would run tape playback sometimes. Like, I didn't really feel like I was this like super important cog. So I remember asking, a couple of guys to teach me how to produce. So we kind of went through the process of how to be a producer and what you do. And I got to do some like the week that this is going back a few years, even before that, when the Steelers went to Super Bowl 40, there was a whole group of folks that went to Detroit for the Super Bowl. And I ended up producing these like 1-minute update segments. And that was really the first time I ever did it.
Okay.
And then, but that was really the only time that I ever felt like I might be in trouble, from that perspective. But because I did that, it kind of opened the door for me to produce. And then a couple of years later, as it would have it, that they asked me to produce full time, and it just kind of went from there. But that was really 2009, I think, was really the only time, and there were some layoffs there that year, but that was just because we had already, we had lost half our shows. So, and a lot of that was because people that had left really didn't get replaced and so forth. So, but that was really the only time I felt like, oh man, I better be ready.
Now, in your opinion, as a producer, what's the most important personality trait somebody needs, like that you need to have to be able to do your job?
I mean, you have to be ready to react to things. I think a lot of the time, so many times you spend a whole day working on a plan, or multiple days working on a plan for a show, to have it fall, kind of completely apart.
Mhm.
I remember one of the very first shows I ever did. The Penguins were in Toronto, and this might have literally been the third or fourth show I've ever done after I became a full-time producer. And I remember at 15 minutes to air, they couldn't get us the camera signals to come back from Toronto to Pittsburgh. So back then, before we had analysts on every pregame show, we relied a lot on the stuff that was going on site to fill that time.
Mhm.
And I honestly don't remember what I filled it with, but I remember walking into the control room, and before I opened the door, just taking a breath and being like, all right, this is it, let's go. So just kind of being able to slow yourself down. And that comes with, like anything else, it comes with experience.
Mhm.
Just kind of being able to, sort of have a backup plan in your head without actually having to have a backup, you know what I'm saying? Without having to have it written out for everyone else. But you kind of know, like, if things go sideways, this is what I'm going to do.
And then in your everyday job, every day going to work, what's the biggest challenge currently, and what's the process that you're going through to kind of alleviate that?
Mostly it's just, trying to keep everything, balanced with,
Mhm.
it's more a work-life balance thing, really. The most challenging thing about working in television and working in sports is it doesn't happen from 9 to 5. So, when, the Pirates play at, 7:30 on Tuesday night, but they have to play at 12:30 on Wednesday, you have to have a plan in place to make sure your
Mhm.
kids get to school, and to make sure that, you're able to help your wife out whenever needed. So that's really the biggest challenge, is just kind of being organized enough to work, to spread out to schedule out your week, to make sure that, I'm where I need to be for work, and I'm where I need to be for my family. And, obviously, being in the remote world now, that helps a little bit on days when there aren't games,
Mhm.
to where I can kind of do that stuff from here. But that's really, I think that's the biggest thing there, is trying to balance between. But as far, I mean, challenges at the office, like, that's just, most of the challenges come when things aren't working right,
Mhm.
when your graphics machine goes down, or when you lose a feed, or your batteries run dead in the microphones, like stuff like that is just, and and when you have that stuff happen to you enough over the course of, now I've been producing 13 years, you kind of know where to go with it, and just, kind of wing it.
So let's talk about some of the broadcasts that you've been a part of, because Pirates wise, there was a 3-year spurt there where it had to be really fun.
Mhm.
Had to be really fun. Is there any games from that 3 years? Maybe in general, are there certain games that you remember, they stick out to you there, and what are they?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Talking about the Pirates, the clinching games of those, I'll never forget the night they clinched at Wrigley.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did not do the post game show that night. I did the pregame show the next day. And I just remember how much, that, I mean, obviously that whole stretch was great. And, even when, the biggest thing for us is, it's not so much about the product. It's not always about the product on the field. Even with, doesn't matter what team it is,
Yeah.
you're always trying to showcase the players and who they are. And, a lot of it is X's and O's, and about, what goes on the field and on the ice. But, so much of the fun things that I like to do tell stories about things that people don't know about. So, like, I love those games. I remember I edited highlights for Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals in 2009. That Pirates game, I've obviously Sidney Crosby's return from the concussion in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
We just had Geno Malkin's 1,000th game. We did that on Sunday. That was a lot of fun. But the things that I remember the most about doing this job are the people that I've met along the way that have let us tell their stories. I was out shooting a high school game once. Guy sent me to shoot Clairton High School, is one of the one of the best teams in the state, have been for a while. That was during their incredible run of I can't remember if Tyler Boyd was on that team or not.
Is that the 68 wins or 63
It might have
wins?
been. It might have been. Yeah. Because it probably would have been back around 2008 roughly. But I remember going to a Clairton game because they just wanted B-roll, and I remember telling me that you could just go and shoot the first half and then you can leave because you'll get all the. They were playing Avella, playing the Avella Eagles that night.
Oh,
The Avella Eagles were winless.
yeah.
Clairton was undefeated, and I get there and I'm shooting the game and I'm on the Avella sideline, and like there's so much room. There, you ever been to a high school football game? Even at a single A school, there's like once you get so close to their sideline, I'm practically at midfield. I'm not near a single soul, and I looked around and I saw that it looked like there were more coaches than players.
Mm-hmm.
There was one other player dressed for the game. And I asked one of the kids, I said, "Hey, where is everybody? What's going on?" He said, "Well, the bunch of kids quit. The three of us are hurt." And that girl right there in the uniform was a head cheerleader a week ago. I was like, wow. So what happened? And so they start telling me the story. And then, so at halftime, instead of leaving, I kind of stuck around to see what happened. In the second play of the third quarter, Avella's quarterback gets hurt. So the coach decided not to put, I apologize, I can't remember her name, the girl that was the cheerleader in the game, because he didn't want her to get hurt. So they played the entire second half with 10 players.
I remember this.
So I shot the game, kind of from there. So now I'm shooting video of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at the end of the game, they almost scored a touchdown against, a Clairton team that I don't think had a lot of subs. And I remember after the game, I'm shooting their huddle, like their post-game group. And one of the Clairton coaches comes over and he was like, "Man, that was incredible. You guys, that's some of the greatest heart I've ever seen. You guys should really be proud of yourselves," kind of deal. And I got all of that. And so when I was done, I asked the coach, I said, "Hey, can I call you this week and talk to you about coming to do a story?" And he was like, yeah, sure. It was just after he lost the game. So he was like, "Yeah, okay, yeah." So I ended up going out there on Tuesday, and there's a guy from the New York Times there doing the exact same story. So, those kind of things, telling the story of the Avella Eagles who, played football just to keep the sport going at the school. And they were able a couple of years later to kind of be back. And, I don't think they ever got to really like championship level, but, just to keep their program going and be able to tell a story like that is one of the things that I remember most about, doing this job.
And it's interesting because, when you think of some of the most dominant programs through the WPIAL, you talk about Clairton, Thomas Jefferson, Gateway, Aliquippa. Aliquippa is a hell of a story. I mean, right now, what they're doing, being forced to elevate and elevate and elevate and still winning. I mean, there's a story behind not just the athletes, but the human beings that the heart, that's what they do. And that's, it's crazy. I didn't know you were a part of that story, but I was in high school when Avella had I remember the whole, because it was big news that they had a cheerleader that had turned into a player to keep the roster able to have a sub. And now, is there a myth that you could debunk for us in the media industry that maybe scares people off? What's the biggest myth that?
Oh, I don't know. I don't really know if there's
It's not a 9 to 5, but I don't think anybody ever advertises it that. It's never.
No, definitely not. And it's not, you don't get to go to every game whenever you want either. That's definitely not in the cards. Obviously they give you a credential and you could go occasionally, but it's not like something where you show up at every game just because, you want to go. So I guess there's that. But I can't really think of any off the top of my head that I could put the kibosh on right away.
So if you're talking to an 18-year-old Shaler student right now, and they're interested in getting into broadcasting, media, producing, directing, editing, basically the communications field, what is your advice for them? And what are some things they should avoid making the mistake of?
Well, I've always been a proponent. This is going back 25 years. Whew, um, and that is just always just kind of have, learn everything because, I always tell my example. I said, I would have sworn to you up and down in 2002. I would have told you if you'd asked me, where are you going to be in 20 years? And I said, well, I'll maybe anchoring sports somewhere, doing play-by-play somewhere, or doing something that's on the air. And that was totally not the case. And the only reason I got to where I am is because when I was in school, I was a producer, I was a director, I was a graphics operator, I was an audio guy, I was a TD. I ended up, I created my own high school show from scratch, which included set design and all that, and all those intricate things that you would never think about doing. So, you always have to just make sure that you are doing different things. And I guess now that would be doing something like this. I mean, you could, create your own YouTube channel and have fun with editing. And, my son the other day showed me, he goes, Dad, look, I made this. He took the catch from Justin Jefferson, the one he made in the Bills game.
Yeah.
And he put it up against the catch that Odell Beckham Jr. had. And there was music and all this stuff on it. He's, Dad, look, I got 3,000 views on YouTube. And I was like, what?
Hey, does he want an internship?
Like, wait a minute.
He wanted an internship. So, we're looking for an editor.
I'm like, dude, like, what is going on? So how did you do that? So he goes, oh, there's this app that I can do this, that, and the other thing. And so it's like, do stuff like that. Just do stuff that gets you out there. And obviously internships are big. I think internships maybe have changed a little bit. Like, we don't even really have an internship program anymore because we eventually there, and you've seen this in the news with, I think with like the film industry where, labor law, free labor and all that stuff came into account. So nobody really wants to do, free internships anymore. So they ended up having to pay interns, and we had a program a little while back that I guess got wiped away because of COVID, where we had freelancers come in and do stuff, but and we do still do that occasionally. But the biggest thing I would say is just try to get, use things like LinkedIn. I have a lot of people reach out to me on LinkedIn and ask me, if we're hiring or if there's something they could do, or if they'll watch the resume tape, and I certainly have no problem in doing that. So not only should you, try to keep your eyes and ears open to everything, but, try to help other people as much as you can, because, you never know when you're going to need that paid back to you at some point.
Well, and let's double back because I skipped over to wind down the show. I want to hear about this high school show that you created and why, what were you thinking when it was a need and you wanted to do it?
Well, kind of. So, I mean, my background at the time was all high school sports. I mean, when I went to Shaler, that's all I did. I did high school. I did football and basketball. And then when I got to Cal U, we were doing we did the college show, and CUTV had so both the TV station and the radio station both did a game of the week. And one of the things that I loved about Cal U was they had an actual like TV truck where they would go out and set up cameras and do a whole entire remote broadcast with graphics and the whole 9 yards. And so that was a lot of my background was in high school sports. So after my first year there, I just thought to myself, man, I'd really love to do, I love doing this high school stuff. So I went to J.R. Wheeler, who was at Dean of Media Services at the time. And I said, J.R., I'd really love to create a high school football show that Jeff and I could do during the season. I didn't even bat an eyelash. She said, oh, well, how long do you want it to be? And I'm like, oh, it's probably 30 minutes. Because when we talked about when we wanted to tape it and, what set we wanted to use. And so the first year, it was just kind of we literally used the same, it was a high top table and 2 chairs. And I actually just grabbed my old Shaler football jersey and a Notre Dame jersey, and I pinned them on the wall behind us. The lighting wasn't great. It was because the set was really only meant for one person. When I think about that set and the way we used to do the show back then, it's kind of crazy. And then the next year, JR and Gary went out and helped. They actually got the local screen printing place to donate a bunch of shirts and jerseys and sweatshirts and they really like blew the setup with all the different like California, Fredericktown, not Burgettstown, but Bentleyville and all those kind of Bell Vernon, all those places down there. And and we got like we had like an L-shaped desk, and it was just like, it was so much fun. I had an MTD shift. So what we did by the master technical director is I would come in on Sunday mornings, and I would air all the church programming that we would air church programs from like 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. So all day Sunday, I was in the station anyway, doing. I was in the station working. So while I was airing these programs, I would go over to the control room and I would edit highlights, and I would build my graphics, and I would write shot sheets and I literally created my graphics from scratch. I had backgrounds for them, and it was an old Video Toaster 4000 that would always crash. But I loved doing the high school stuff. It was something that, back then, it wasn't as, I don't want to say it wasn't as mainstream, but you didn't have the internet. You even had, there was a little bit of internet broadcasting of it back then, which I got into a little bit after college, but it just, I enjoyed it so much, and they were just like, yeah, do it. You want to do it. Like, that was the great thing about being there at Cal U, was that if you really wanted to do something, they did their best to help make it happen. There were guys who made movies, guys who made, they did shows on Santa Claus, and they really nurtured everybody's ideas, and did everything they could to make sure that, they came to fruition, and you always learn something from it.
Wow. I didn't realize, I mean, from the first year to the second year, it just seems like the set went through the drastic change, and then it was just kind of a run.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have two more questions for you. If you could have coffee with any three people in the industry, past or present, who would they be and why?
That's a good one. Probably Scott Van Pelt. I really like I really like that Sports Center show he does. After I usually watch it a lot after Monday Night Football. I think he would definitely be somebody I like to kind of bend his ear. Man, that's a tough one. Maybe this kind of goes beyond TV so much, but maybe George Lucas. I'd kind of like to talk a lot about the film. I don't really know much about the film industry. I think it'd be kind of interesting to talk about that and see how you could work that into what we currently do. And it's kind of off the wall, but Chuck Noll. I was always such a big Chuck Noll fan growing up. He was he was a guy that, like, you could just tell that, like, he wasn't like a big powerful dude, but I mean, everybody had all the respect in the world for what he did with the team. So I think I'd love to talk with him about how he was able to accomplish that.
And being that this is the episode that kicks off the month, I know that everybody has been celebrating Christmas since about October 31st, but we do have a holiday.
Unbelievable.
There. It was last week. We had a holiday. It's about eating and being with family and giving thanks. Now we're moving into the month of the Christmas. So is there a holiday movie that you like? And is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
I will say Die Hard is a Christmas movie. I'll go out on that. I'll go out on that ledge.
It takes place on Christmas.
As far as there's Christmas music in it. Like, my favorite holiday movie has to be Christmas Vacation. I can't, a lot of people love A Christmas Story, but and I do too. But I really think that the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation is just like, I could never get. Well, I guess you can never get tired of watching any of these. You only really watch them 1 month out of the year.
Yeah.
But that's one that was on. It was actually on in like September and I watched it because it was on. So I was like, somebody aired it in September, and I was like, hey,
I'll watch it.
But you have to watch it on you either have to watch it on DVD or on HBO or whatever, because
You
if you
can't
try to
have
watch
everything
it on AMC, that's just not doing it justice. So don't. No.
There's certain movies that I appreciate them trying to get them on TV, and I get it. You get commercials and all that, but like Scarface, you might as well cut out 3 of the 4.5 hours that movie is, because I'm not going to sit there and watch every other word be beeped or blanked or know that that's not what he said. So,
or Die Hard for that matter. I mean,
Die Hard's tough because like I'll watch it, but it's just not the same. And then the commercial breaks, and I know that you don't control that. That's not your job to like say like, commercial. But like, why does it have to be right right where we're getting to a good part? You got to cut me off and send me into 15 minutes of cleaning and housing and insurance, and I don't want any of it. I got enough advertisements coming to me. Leave we need to remove ads from TV. Let's just, that's I'm kidding. I don't want. Well, I think that's a good place. I think we've covered everything. Is there anything that I asked you or I did not ask you that you wish I would have, and how would you have answered it?
No, it was great talking to you. I think it's, like I said, this is great that you are able to get kind of, try to help people get the word out about how to, how to get into the business. I don't know how much I'm helping, but if anybody out there, is ever looking for advice, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to help.
Well, happy holidays, because I will, and I'll talk to you after this, obviously. But that's a great way. Yeah, happy holidays. Never talk to you again. Thanks for being on the show. See you later. You can find us, for anybody that wants to watch. I know that wasn't a great way to send the show off. So let me try that again. For those of you that want to find us, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Google, pretty much anywhere you can get a spot or get a podcast. We are there. Just type in DingoTalk. It's all one word. And then on social media, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. Other than Instagram, everything is DingoTalk. On Instagram, it's Dingo_talk, because if you type in DingoTalk, you will find a very nice Australian man with dingoes, wild dingoes. He posts new pictures every day and he talks about them, and very nice gentleman, but he's not me. I type in DingoTalk, you will find him. It's a dingo face and everything. I mean, so Fred Rihn, thank you very much. I am Carlo Guadagnino. This has been DingoTalk, and we will catch you next week, chuckleheads.